Imagine marrying the man of your dreams only to discover that his love came with a condition. Imagine waking up one morning and the first thing your husband says is, "It's not good money, my love, but have you checked the hospital dates because we need to do something about your nose?" Not because you're sick, not because your life depended on it, but because according to him, your face was standing in the way of his happiness. If only some women knew what they were getting themselves into, they would have run the very first day he told her that she would be his wife. Once upon a time, there lived a woman named Summer. She was 28 years old, soft-spoken, hardworking, and possessed the kind of beauty that did not shout. It was the kind of beauty that made people stare twice, not because she was loud, but because she was so peaceful. Summer grew up in a compound in Lagos where love was not something people talked about. Her father was extremely strict, while her mother was always tired. From a very young age, Summer learned a dangerous habit, the habit of endurance. Summer endured school fees that came late. She endured insults from aunties who asked why she was still unmarried at 28. She endured men who wanted her body but never wanted to settle down with her. And because she was so used to enduring, she mistook the wrong kind of attention as destiny. That was how she met Demola Day, also referred to as Dola or Demola, a man who was well-spoken and good-looking. Demola was everything the world respected, a successful tech consultant with two cars and a calm smile that made people feel safe. They met at a wedding in Lekki when Summer's friend dragged her to a table of eligible bachelors. Summer did not even want to go. She was tired, her heels hurt, and she had already decided she would go home early. But then Demola looked at her and said something that made her freeze, not because it was romantic, but because it was so specific. "You have a small scar beside your left eyebrow," he said softly, smiling. "It makes you look real." Summer blinked in surprise. People noticed her skin, her shape, her smile, but no man had ever noticed that. She laughed shyly. "It's from when I was a child." He nodded like he already knew. "I like it," he said. "Don't ever remove it." It sounded sweet. It sounded deep. It sounded like a man who was so observant. Some did not know that observant men are sometimes not admiring you, they are studying you. And from that day on, Dola became consistent. He called, he checked on her, he sent her food, and he even brought her books. When she mentioned that she wanted to do her MBA, he listened when she spoke and even asked questions like he cared. Within 3 months, he met her parents, and within 5, he proposed. Summer, who had watched her mates marry, relocate, and post couple photos while she stayed behind, felt like God had finally answered her prayers. Her mother cried, her father nodded approvingly, her friends screamed and shouted in excitement. And Damola smiled as he held her hand and said something that would later haunt her forever. "Don't worry, Summer. I will take care of everything. You just have to trust me." The wedding was small but classy, white and gold, soft music, a hall in Victoria Island, and a husband who looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. On their wedding night, he held her face gently and whispered, "You are so beautiful, my darling." Summer's heart melted like butter, then he said something that made her blink at him, confused. "You will be even more beautiful when we are done." Summer laughed nervously. "When we are done with what?" He kissed her forehead. "Sleep first, my love. We'll talk about it much later." That night, Summer slept with a smile. She didn't know that she had just signed into a marriage where her body was the project. 2 weeks after the wedding, Damola began to change, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, subtle way, the kind that makes you question yourself. It started with little helpful comments. "You know, if your teeth were a bit whiter, you'd look more polished. Your stomach isn't bad, but with a small lipo, it will give you that snatched look. Your nose is fine, but there's a sharper version of you inside." Summer would laugh awkwardly. At first, she thought he was joking. Then one day, she came home and met a file on their dining table, a brown envelope that made her heart race. Inside were printed papers, before and after photos, hospital brochures, and a schedule that shocked Summer to her marrow. Her throat went dry as she flipped through the pages like they were burning her hands. Then she heard Daemola's voice behind her. "Oh, good. You've seen it," he said calmly, like he had left groceries on the table. Summer turned slowly. "What is this?" He walked closer, poured himself water, and sat down like a man discussing electricity bills. "It's our next phase, my darling." "Our what?" "Our upgrade," he said, smiling. "Don't panic, Summer. I'm not insulting you. I'm improving what I already love." Summer could not breathe. "You want me to do surgery?" "Yes." "Why?" Dola looked at her like she was being difficult. "Because I have a certain taste." Summer swallowed. "But you married me like this." "So what's the problem?" He nodded. "I did, and I'm still married to you. I'm just saying that there's a higher version of you that we can unlock." Summer forced a laugh, hoping it was still a joke, but Damola did not laugh. His face remained calm, his voice remained gentle, and that was what made it so scary. "Summer," he said softly, "I'm not asking, I'm telling you." That night, Summer cried alone in the bathroom, not because of surgery, but because for the first time in her life, she realized something painful. This man did not love her. He loved an idea of her, and he was trying to cut her open until she matched it. For days, she tried to talk herself out of it. Maybe he was just obsessed with aesthetics. Maybe he had grown up around rich people. Maybe he meant well, so she tried to negotiate. "What if I go to the gym instead?" He smiled. "Gym can't change bone structure." "What if I do teeth whitening instead of veneers?" He sighed. "You're not listening." "What if I don't want any of it?" she asked. And that was the first time Demola raised his voice, not shouting, just colder. "If you don't want it, then you don't want me." Summer froze. He stood up, adjusted his wristwatch, and said the sentence that changed everything. "I didn't marry you to stay stuck." Summer began to notice other things. He stopped taking pictures with her. He stopped posting her online. When they went out, he would walk ahead of her and pretend like he didn't hear when people greeted them. He became suddenly busy. His mother started calling. At first, his mother-in-law had been friendly, but now she was always advising Summer like she was training a stubborn child. My daughter, her mother-in-law would say, men don't like embarrassment. Make your husband happy. Is that too much to ask? Summer would whisper, but Mama, I'm healthy. Why does he need surgery? The woman would laugh. Healthy is not the issue. Appearance is respect. One day, her mother-in-law came to the house unannounced. She walked into the sitting room, sat down like she owned the place, and said, my son told me that you're refusing. Summer's heart pounded. Refusing what, Mama? The woman leaned in. Don't pretend your nose. Summer blinked. Mama, what is wrong with my nose? Listen, the woman snapped. Good wife does not argue with what benefits her. If my husband had money to fix me when I was young, I would have done it and thanked him. Summer whispered, but I'm not broke, Mama. Her mother-in-law stared at her for a long moment, then she smiled slowly and said, you're lucky my son likes you at all. That night, Summer overheard Damola on the phone. He was in the study. He didn't know she was behind the door. His voice was very low. I'm trying, he said, but she's resisting. A pause. Then no, 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 we can't wait too long. Time is sensitive. Summer's stomach tightened as she listened. The doctor said it's possible once we start with the face. After that, she'll comply. Summer held her breath. Then he said the sentence that made her blood run cold. She doesn't have to understand. She just has to look right. Look right? Look right for what? Summer entered the bathroom quietly and stared at herself in the mirror. Her face, her nose, her lips, her eyes. She touched her cheek like she was confirming that she was real. Then she whispered, what is happening to me? Am I not pretty enough? Weeks passed, and Summer began to do some digging because when your spirit is uneasy, the truth is usually hiding nearby. She checked Damola's laptop one day while he was in the shower. Her hands were shaking. She wasn't proud of it, but her fear was louder than her morals. She checked his email. What she saw made her sit down on the floor. Emails to a clinic, appointments, payments, but it wasn't just her name. There were other names, female names with dates beside them. Summer tight. How many women? She clicked one file. A photo opened, a woman's face before surgery, then after. The after looked so familiar, not like Summer, but like someone else. Someone she had seen before. She scrolled again. Another woman, before and after. Again, the same pattern. Different women, but the after results were all aiming at the same face. The same nose, the same lips, the same jawline, the same signature look. Summer's heart hammered. Why was he turning women into the same person? Then she found a folder titled Dream Face. Summer clicked on it and froze so hard that her body felt numb. The reference photo was of a stunning woman, rich girl aura, expensive hairstyle, perfectly shaped nose, soft eyes, and a familiar scar beside her left eyebrow. Summer's scar, the one that Dola had noticed at the wedding. Summer zoomed in with trembling fingers. The scar was in the exact same place. Her blood turned cold because that scar wasn't unique to her, it was a matching mark, and written under the photo was one name, Nadia Day, the same surname as Dola. Who was Nadia? His sister, his cousin, his ex, and why was he recreating her face on other women? Summer heard the shower stop. She quickly closed the laptop and stood up as if she had been folding clothes. Demola came out of the bathroom in a towel, his face calm like a dove. He looked at her and smiled. Are you okay? Summer forced a smile back. I'm fine, she said, but inside her entire being was screaming. That night, Summer could not sleep. She kept seeing the photo in her mind. The face, the scar, the name Nadia Day continued to ring in her mind. So by morning, Summer decided to find out who this Nadia woman was, even if it was the last thing she did. Summer went to her mother-in-law's house under the excuse of seeking advice. She dressed nicely, smiled politely, and sat in the living room like a good wife. Her mother-in-law offered her a drink. They exchanged small talk, then Summer asked gently, Mama, please, who is Nadia? The cup in her mother-in-law's hand paused midair just for a second, and that second was enough. Her mother-in-law recovered quickly and smiled. Nadia, why do you ask? Summer shrugged lightly. I saw a picture in Dola's old album. She looks familiar. Her mother-in-law's eyes hardened. Summer swallowed hard and asked what had happened. The woman stared at her for a long moment and said it was not her concern. That is not your concern, she said. As Summer stood up to leave, her mother-in-law added casually, Summer, don't go digging where you won't like what you find. Summer's palms became sweaty. She drove home with her heart racing, wondering what her mother-in-law meant by that. That night, Damola came home with gifts, a designer handbag, a box of perfumes, and jewelry that Summer had admired for a while. Summer stared at him in disbelief, knowing the gifts were not harmless. Her husband had never bought her anything before. She watched as he sat beside her and began to speak. My darling, I booked your first consultation at the hospital. The doctor will be expecting you the day after tomorrow. Summer could feel her throat tight. I told you I'm not ready now, she said. Damola touched her cheek gently. His voice was calm, but his words cut like venom. You don't have to be ready, Summer. You just have to cooperate. Summer looked at him, terrified, and in that moment she decided something. If he wanted a project, she would become a problem. She began to pretend. She began to agree. She smiled more, acted shy and grateful, and even apologized for being so stubborn. Damola's eyes brightened. His mother started praising her. Good girl, she said on the phone. That is how a wife behaves. Summer acted like she was finally obedient, but behind that obedience was a plan because if you fight a manipulator openly, they tighten their grip. However, if you pretend to submit, you gain access. Summer went for the consultation. The doctor spoke about procedures. She watched as her husband asked questions as if he was shopping for items. Summer sat quietly, nodding, smiling, behaving like a doll. Then she asked one simple question, Doctor, how many women have you done the same look on? The doctor chuckled awkwardly and looked at Damola, who smiled back and said his wife was only joking. But Summer knew she was not joking. After the appointment, she waited until Damola was distracted. Then she slipped the receptionist a small tip. Please, she whispered, I'm confused. Is my husband a regular here? The receptionist hesitated. Then she leaned in and whispered back, Madam, I'm not supposed to talk to you, but yes, your husband is a regular. Summer's heart pounded. How many times? The receptionist swallowed hard. A lot, madam. For me? The receptionist shook her head. For the other women he brought here, the only problem was that they didn't look exactly like the face that he wanted. Summer's breath caught. She walked out with a smile on her face like nothing had happened. But deep inside her soul, something had snapped. That night, Summer searched again, this time deeper. She found a hidden password-protected folder on Damola's phone. She guessed the password not because she was smart, but because manipulators are arrogant. The password was Nadia's name, and when the folder opened, Summer's knees went weak. Videos, photographs, messages, and one voice note that changed everything. It was Damola's voice speaking to someone. I can't lose it again. If I recreate her face perfectly, it will work. The family will accept her, the inheritance will transfer, everything will become complete. Summer's blood ran cold. Inheritance transfer, recreate her face. She pressed play on another file. It was a scanned document, a will. And under the will was one key line. The family estate and offshore assets will be released only to my daughter Nadia upon her marriage and presentation to the family council. Summer's lips parted in shock. Nadia was the key to wealth and Nadia was not there, so Damola's plan was to recreate a replacement, a wife who looked like Nadia, so the family council believed she was Nadia and released the inheritance to them. Summer's stomach turned. She wasn't a wife, she was a disguise. She was a passport to money, she was a living mask. Summer sat on the bed shaking, then she heard Damola's footsteps in the corridor. She quickly hid the phone and lay down. Damola entered the bedroom, kissed her forehead, and whispered, Soon, my darling, you'll be perfect. Summer closed her eyes and whispered back inside her heart, No, Damola, soon you'll be exposed. The next day, Summer went to meet someone she hadn't spoken to in years, Damola's younger cousin Femi, who once tried to warn her during the wedding preparations. Femi had pulled her aside and said, Summer, please be careful. She had laughed then, now she found him, she told him everything. Femi listened silently, then he sighed and said something that almost made her heart drop. You don't know the worst part? Summer stiffened. What is the worst part? Femi looked at her with pity. Nadia was Damola's fiancée. Summer froze. Fiancée, I guessed as much. Femi nodded slowly. They were supposed to marry quietly abroad, but her father refused because of the will. The old man said that Nadia must marry with family presence. Summer's eyes widened, but they shared the same surname. Femi shook his head as he leaned in. She disappeared. No one knew where she had gone or if she was still alive. Summer's heart pounded. Why did she run away? Because Nadia found out that Damola was trying to recreate her after she broke the engagement. He was so obsessed with getting her money, he wanted her face to be the standard. He wanted everyone to become her because he could not control her anymore and needed access to her wealth. Summer's voice broke. So where is Nadia now? Femi looked away. I don't know, but I know one thing for sure. What? Femi looked at Summer. If you don't leave now, you may not survive it. That night, Summer packed quietly. Her hands were trembling. She put her documents in a bag. She wrote a short note and left it on the dining table. Then she walked out. But as she opened the gate, two men stepped out of the darkness, security men, not their normal security. These ones looked like private bouncers. One of them smiled. Madam, Oga say you should not go anywhere tonight. Summer's heart stopped. She turned slowly and saw Dola standing at the balcony, watching, smiling calm like a man watching his own property try to escape. Summer's legs felt weak as Damola walked down and approached her. He spoke softly. Why are you running? Summer's voice shook. Because you lied to me. He tilted his head. About what? You wanted to change me into Nadia. The smile on Damola's face disappeared for the first time. His calm mask cracked. He stared at her and whispered, So you know. Summer swallowed. I'm not your project, Damola, and I will never subject myself to surgery. He stepped closer until his face was inches from hers, his voice low and dangerous. You became my wife, that means you belong to the plan. Summer's eyes filled with tears. Then Damola said something that made her stomach turn. Don't worry, Summer, even if you refuse, we have other methods. Summer's body went cold, other methods. That night they locked her in the house, not with chains but with control, men at the gate, phones taken, a husband smiling like everything was normal. Summer sat on the bed and realized that this was not just vanity, this was a trap, and the only way to win a trap is to make the hunter think that you're already caught, so she pretended again. The next morning she apologized, she cried, she said she was scared but willing. Damola's face softened instantly as he stroked her hair. That's my good girl, he whispered. He hugged her like he loved her, and Summer hugged him back while her eyes remained open, watching, counting, waiting. From that day on, Summer became the wife Damola wanted. She smiled, she stopped questioning, she stopped crying, she nodded through conversations and thanked him for caring so much about her progress. Damola relaxed, believing that he had conquered her spirit. The bouncers at the gate became fewer and her phone was returned. The house began to feel lighter, and that was when Summer made her next move. She went for a routine blood test, nothing suspicious, nothing dramatic, just a simple health check that she claimed the doctors requested before surgery. But Summer had added one extra request, a DNA test, not because she was looking for answers, but because something inside her refused to stay quiet. The scar, the face, the resemblance with Nadia. The way Damola had recognized her before he even claimed to love her. Summer found a hairbrush in a box that was labeled NA, and in that moment she guessed it belonged to Nadia, so she took out the hair and handed it over to the hospital to run the DNA test. A few days later, Summer returned to the clinic alone. The doctor handed her the result, and to her greatest surprise, the result was a match. Summer's hands shook as she tried to understand what was happening. Her chest tightened as the truth came crashing down like a wave. Nadia was her blood sister, not only her biological sister, but her twin sister, as the results showed they were twins. Summer could not breathe. Her mind raced back to their childhood, the unanswered questions, the strange gaps in her early memories, her mother's tired eyes, her father's silence, the way she was always told that she almost did not make it. Summer left the hospital shaking, but she didn't go home. She went straight to her parents' house. And that was where the final truth was unveiled. Summer sat across from her parents in silence. Her mother's hands trembled as Summer placed the DNA result on the table. "I need you to tell me the truth, Mama," Summer said quietly. "All of it, Papa, Mama, tell me all of it." Her father sighed deeply, like a man who had been waiting for this day all his life. "We found you," he began slowly, 28 years ago in an uncompleted building. Summer's breath caught in her throat. "It was raining heavily that night," her mother continued. "We heard the baby crying. At first we thought it was a cat, but your father insisted that we go check what it was. Lo and behold, they found her curled up alone in an uncompleted building. There was no note," her father added, "no name, no hospital tag, just that scar beside your eyebrow." Summer's hand shook. "So what was I doing there?" Her father shook his head. "We assumed someone abandoned you there on purpose. We reported it to the police, but no one ever came forward for you. We were told to hand you over to a motherless baby's home, but your mother broke down completely and said she could not. The court gave you to us when we were struggling to have a child of our own." Summer closed her eyes as tears began to pour. Everything began to make more sense. The scar, the resemblance, the obsession. She wasn't being turned into Nadia. She was Nadia's mirror, although their resemblance was not like that of identical twins. That night, Summer returned home calm. Her husband, Damola, noticed immediately. "You seem lighter," he said, smiling. Summer lied to him that she was only nervous about her upcoming surgery. Damola believed her, not knowing that Summer had found out the complete truth. 2 weeks later, something happened that shook the entire city in a way that Damola did not anticipate. A construction worker who was cleaning an abandoned property discovered something terrifying. Human remains were discovered in a septic tank at the back of the property. The news spread fast. Investigation revealed that the body belonged to Nadia Day. The autopsy went on to reveal that Nadia died of blunt force trauma to the head. Nadia did not just disappear. She had tried to expose the man who she thought was in love with her, and Damola silenced her before she had the opportunity to tell her family that he was only with her because of her inheritance. When the police dug deeper, everything unraveled: the police records, the payments, the women, the surgeries, the voice notes, even the will. And finally, Summer, the twin sister who no one knew existed, the one that Damola thought he could mold, the one he married thinking that she was a tool. But the law does not recognize lies, it recognizes blood, and blood does not forget. The court ruled swiftly. Nadia confirmed dead, and Summer proved to be her biological twin. The inheritance clause was activated. The estate was passed down to Summer, every property, every offshore account, every asset Damola had killed for frozen, then transferred. Damola was arrested, charged, and convicted not just for murder, but for fraud, coercion, conspiracy, and psychological abuse. In court, he looked at Summer once, just once. And for the first time, fear replaced control. Summer never looked back. She kept her face, her scar, her nose, her identity. She sold some properties, donated others. Summer learned her lesson the hard way. Not every man who studies you loves you. Some are only studying you to know how best to manipulate you. The lesson to be learned from this story is that not everyone who claims to love you actually loves you. Some people love the control they think they can have over you. When someone starts making you feel like you need to change your body, your face, your voice, or your spirit just to be worthy, that is not love. That is manipulation wearing a romantic mask. And the earlier you recognize it, the easier it is to escape. Because the truth is, the most dangerous prisons are not made of iron. They are built with sweet words, silent threats, and the fear of starting over.